Hi everyone, pleasure to be here. Hey Sarah, good to
Hi,
have
Mo.
you here. How's your first trip to Pakistan so far?
It's been interesting. It's my first time here, so I'm excited to be here. And thank you, Nikki.
Any highlights?
I went to the mosque yesterday. It was really cool to see. But yeah, there's a lot of eagles, which I really like. I like eagles, so that's a highlight.
There's a lot of birds flying over the city. So, hi everyone. End of second day. Are you still excited? Oh wow. Who loves space here? Anyone want to go to space? No one want to go to space? Okay, two. Wow. Okay. Today, Sara went to space actually, and we're going to hear from her today about her journey and all of that. But I'd love to introduce her first and then give her the chance to tell us a little bit about herself. So, Sara is basically an outlier. I don't think how many people went to space.
Since the beginning of time, about 630 something.
600 something out of 8 billion people. That qualifies you for an absolute outlier. She's an engineer, a researcher, an astronaut, and the first African woman to go to space. Can we put our hands together for her? Okay, I'm gonna start this panel with a silly question. You went to space and you can confirm or deny that. Is the Earth flat?
No, it's round.
Okay, great. Anyone here thinks Earth is flat? Oh, someone raised his hand. You think Earth is flat? Wow. Sarah, do you have anything for him?
I can tell you that it's not. It's not flat. It's very much round. 100%.
Okay. Before we jump into space, I'd love to give you a chance and give the audience a chance to get to know you a little bit more. How would you describe yourself, especially beyond work? And yeah, go ahead.
I've always been a very curious person. So since I was young, it was always about trying to understand everything around me. And that's what pushed me to become an engineer, to really try to understand things that were around me and also to solve problems. So I'm kind of a curious problem solver. That's, I think.
Oh, wow. What a great describe. How important curiosity is, especially for young people.
I'm sorry?
How important curiosity is, especially for young people.
I think it's really important to be curious because I think that's something that pushes you to try to understand things. And by trying to understand things, you find problems that need to be solved and you push a little bit forward.
Oh, great. Okay. Can you take me through your day, your habits, how you stay healthy, fit, and happy?
So in order to, when you have a very tight schedule, you really have to be able to manage your time very properly. So for me, like when I was starting my company and when I was deciding that I could potentially go to space and I wanted to train for that, I would wake up at 4:30 in the morning, do my workout, work on the research, work on the company that I was founding, and I had a full-time job too. So I would work 8 hours on my full-time job, go to the office, come back, continue working, have my meetings, and start all over again. So you have to be very, very disciplined. And always have that mission in mind. You always have to have a goal that you're trying to reach to, or like something that you want to solve. I think that's really important, and just really visualizing it.
You mentioned your training to go to space. How does that look like? What do I have to go through as a human being to be able to go to space?
So there's a few things. And I think when we think about going to space, we think of very, very intense training. And you have to be you do a lot of physical training and also psychological training. So having an understanding of what you have to have, what you need to be able to do in space, really being able to work with a team, being compassionate are like qualities that are extremely important to be able to function and have a successful mission. And also physically, because it's very physically demanding as well. So you train physically in terms of like handling G-forces, having good endurance, keeping up with your keeping your muscle mass and bone density as well, because when you go to space, you actually lose them. So you need to be able to also like have good bone density before going. Weightlifting helps with that. And then also you have to be able to work in isolation, because when you go to space, you're going to be in isolation. You're going to only have your crew members that you're going to be working with. So being able to work in isolation, being able to work under stressful conditions, and really, really, really one of the most important things is really being able to work with a team and really taking care of your team always, because it's really important we're always working together. And if someone is feeling a certain way, that impacts everyone. So really making sure, always being, for me, when I was doing an analog mission, which is a simulation on Earth, so we simulated being on the moon for a couple of weeks, and I was medical officer. But I also became the crew psychologist. So where you really have to speak to everyone, really try to understand how everyone is feeling as well, because that's so super important in order to have that successful mission, to achieve the objectives you were set out to do during your mission.
Wow, sounds like a lot. Speaking of G-force, I'm a huge motorsports fan, especially Formula One. How much G-force you go through to go to space?
So
and for how long? Because that's very important too.
That's true. So now on my mission, going up, so during launch, it was about 2 point something, but coming down, it was 5 point something. So 5 Gs is pretty extreme, because when you're going down and you have the capsule free falling before the parachutes deploy, you have the atmosphere slowing you down. And it's really, really extreme, and you can basically not move at 5G. And imagine 5 times your own body weight on your chest. It's difficult to breathe sometimes. So, not sometimes, actually it is. So you have to really be able to train yourself to have specific breathing techniques in order not to pass out as well. And also to be reactive too. So you have to keep a lot of things in mind.
Wow.
That. But when you train at higher Gs. So when I was training, I trained up to 8 Gs.
Wow. To quantify that in a way, that's a Formula One accident at almost 300 kilometers an hour, full speed into a wall, almost 5, which is, we see what happens to drivers. So you basically go through that G-force, and then you have to continue. That's it's not going to this G-force and then going to the hospital. I go through this G-force and I continue on the mission. Wow. What do you think that could be different in the future with more inventions? Because that sounds like something not a lot of people can go through.
Well, when we're talking about missions to space, you have to go on a rocket. And rockets, you have to have a specific thrust and a specific impulse and all of this. And I think with that, it depends on how big the rocket is, the amount of power that it can handle, the distance that you're trying to go to. If you're trying to reach orbit, you need a lot more power, which means more specific, a higher specific impulse, higher thrust, and this all leads to more Gs. So for different flights, I think 2 Gs is quite handleable. I think they're making it more comfortable, so to say. And it's also very automated now. All the spacecrafts that we have now, every single one of them are fully automated. So again, I think that also helps a little bit with, yes, you're going through a lot of G-forces, but you don't have to do as much as we did with what we had to do before. And that's why before, when we had the space shuttle and the Soyuz, we used to only recruit astronauts that were that were fighter pilots. Because when you're a fighter pilot, you have to train with very, very high Gs, and you get really comfortable at it. And to be honest, you do get used to it. So the more you do these G-force trainings, the more you get used to it, and it's really not that bad when you do it many, many times. Your body adjusts, you're able to function better. And if you can imagine a fighter pilot when they're flying really, really extremely fast and doing all of these maneuvers, because I had to do similar things for my training, if you get exposed to it a few times, well, the pilot has to handle those 8 Gs. They can handle up to 10 Gs, and they still have to make all the decisions, and they're completely handling the aircraft. So the more we're doing it, the better you get, just like everything else in the world. And
sounds comforting in a way.
Well, you have to be, yeah.
Okay, I want to go to the beginning. You grew up in Cairo. What do you remember from those days, and what inspired you to take that significant leap?
I grew up in Cairo and I went to a French school there, did my mechanical engineering degree in Egypt. I was really interested in cars. I wanted to do car design, and I was really interested in the human body, so I really wanted to be a physician as well. So I decided to combine both and do biomedical engineering. So it was always about solving problems. Everything that I did throughout my entire journey, for all of my career, in all aspects, it was always about problem solving. And I think the one thing that hasn't changed for me is the amount of curiosity I have. And I mean, we tend to kind of lose this curiosity when we grow older because we get comfortable with the situation around us. We always think about other institutions, other systems, other organizations solving those problems for us. But if you take responsibility and you continue to think that there's always something for you to do, there's always something that you can handle yourself, then you have to continue doing that. So for me, it was always about that. It was always about being a little bit stubborn, a little bit not listening to what people were telling me that I should or shouldn't be. Because I was always told that I wasn't normal. You know, you're always told in Egypt that, like, why can't you be normal? Why are you interested in these things? Like, are you rebelling, you know? So yeah, I always felt like I didn't really fit in anywhere because what I was doing wasn't what everyone else was doing. And I also couldn't see myself in any of the positions that were around me as well. So it wasn't like I could see something someone was doing and say, oh, this is what I want to do, because I couldn't see that. So when I got into the space field, it wasn't really out of being inspired as a child to go to space. You know, a lot of astronauts talk about seeing Apollo missions and thinking, oh, this is what I want to be when I grow up. And then they end up doing it, right? But then very few of them end up doing it, actually. But for me, it wasn't really that. Like, we're not, and you're from Egypt as well, and I think even in Jordan, it's also like that, and I'm sure here as well, like, we're not exposed to this when we were kids. We don't have rocket launches being broadcasted on TV. We don't hear of astronauts from our cities, from our world, from our continent, even. So it's just very far away, and when you're interested in these things, you're kind of put down a little bit. You're kind of still being told, and it could come from a good place too, when your parents are worried or when people around you are worried that you need to kind of like bring your head back down to earth, right? Just to kind of protect you from, you know, having a specific type of career or having a life, being able to also support yourself and like have a life that is reasonable or that is, you know, possible. So a lot of it comes from good intentions. A lot of it doesn't come from good intentions either. So like, I think it's both, and I think it's just being able to have some sort of kind of confidence or to kind of shut down the doubt and shut down what people are telling you that you shouldn't do or you shouldn't be, or to like be realistic, because that's the word that I've always been told. Like, I've always been told to be realistic and to kind of strive for what was possible, but that wasn't really for me.
Wow, have you dealt with that? On top of everything you said, I can feel every bit of it growing up in, technically speaking, the same part of the world, and I think a lot of you here would feel the same. As a woman, have you dealt with that? Because it's a little bit, I'm sure it's a little bit different. It's not like we live in a part of the world where you can become tomorrow a driver or an engineer or like a racing, like you're interested in cars. I think if you go home and like, I want to be a racing driver. What? So how you dealt with that as a woman?
Well, I think there's pros and cons in everything. And how I like to look at this is that being a woman I was still able to do everything that I wanted to do. And it's about really not listening to those doubts and not listening to what people are telling you. Because yes, you can meet people and they doubt everything that you're capable of doing. I was told not to study mechatronics because it would be too difficult for someone like me, that I wouldn't have any opportunities in my country because of like biomedical engineering is not a thing, that I was wasting my time, you know, all of those things. Of course, you're always told that. And of course, as a woman, it's a little bit more because it's, you know, you do see. And that's in most of the meetings that you're in, you're the only woman. And in most of the meetings that you're in, when you're speaking to investors, to other CEOs, you're always, like, people would mistake me for being with the media and a journalist. Not that it's a bad thing at all, like not that journalism is a great thing, it is. But that I would always be mistaken for that and not be taken seriously. But if I was a man, it wouldn't have been that way. But also there's a lot of pros that come with that. You tend to learn to trust your gut very, very fast, like very fast. So we do develop this kind of like a pair of glasses that sees through all the, all of that. And you tend to learn really quickly who you want to work with and who you don't want to work with. And you have control over that. And the more you grow into the field, the more you're put in leadership positions. It's your responsibility to not let that happen again and to make it easier and to not have people's passports or genders be the judgment for what they're capable of doing or not.
Wow, what a beautiful answer. I love it. Let's go to more into space as of space and why we do it. Why do we go to space? And why it's such an important matter for the human race?
We go to space for a lot of reasons. So there's a lot of technical reasons for why we go to space, and there's also like very philosophical reasons for that. So I'll tell you like why I got interested in the space field, and then I'll give you like also the backup arguments to that too. So I got interested in the space field because I was going through some sort of existential crisis, like a lot of you guys must have gone through at some point in your life, when you have a lot of questions about the world, about our origins, about the future of humanity. And I think once we have those questions, we try to look for answers. And for me, I was left with bigger questions. And the way for us to have those answers is for humanity to be able to be able to travel farther away from Earth, because it's huge, like the universe is very, very big, and we all know that space isn't Earth, but that Earth isn't space, sorry. But there's so much out there, like the physics of it is just really difficult for our minds to even imagine. Like the scale of it is just really impossible for our brains to even imagine. So when I got into that and I really had those questions, I decided, so there is something for us to be doing here. Like we have to be able to help humanity become multiplanetary. So how can we do that? And what can I do about that? So I decided to really dig into that and use my skills in mechanical engineering, biomedical engineering to help push the field forward. And then once I was doing that, I discovered that a lot of the technologies that we're developing for space have been used on Earth since the very beginning. A lot of the tools and like things that we've developed for the space shuttle, let's say, like a specific part of it has been used for heart transplants, and they've been used for many, many years. Let's say memory foam that you're using for your couches, beds, and pillows, they've been developed for space. Some of the pens that you're using have been developed for space. There are hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands, of technologies that you're using every single day that have initially been developed for space, but we're using every single day on Earth. And then when we're talking about climate change, which Pakistan has been heavily affected by, it's, there's a lot of the things that we're developing for space could help with that in the future as well. We're developing MOXIE. So MOXIE is now on Mars, actually, that is using CO2 to create oxygen. So this is one step towards terraforming Mars. And I know it's not going to happen now. We're still like a few hundred years away from completely terraforming Mars, so don't get too excited yet. But we have been able to successfully create oxygen on Mars. So that's a really important step to talk about, because when we're talking about Earth and climate change, when we have a lot of carbon, we have a lot of CO2 that is trapped in Earth's atmosphere. And this trapping is actually what's keeping the heat in. So if you're able to remove the CO2 from the atmosphere, you're going to be able to reduce the effects of climate change as well and cool down Earth a little bit more. And this is one example out of hundreds, So there's so many things, medications that have been developed for space, because when you go to space, your bones demineralize, which means they lose density. And every single person in this room is going to age, hopefully. And as you age, you're going to go through something called osteoporosis. Osteoporosis means when you're not have to go through that, but as you age, you lose bone density. And when you lose bone density, you can easily get injured. There's a lot of problems with it, of course. So when you go to space, that happens at a much rapid pace. So when you go to space and you spend some time there, you lose bone density because how your cells react to this environment without perceived gravity is that it has nothing is telling your bones to produce more bone cells because of the lack of load. So there's a lot of things that you do in space to help with that. So like working out and stuff, but also medication. So pharmaceuticals in space to help astronauts in space, you can use it on Earth too. Same with, your vestibular system, which is like your inner ear system that is for that gives you like balance and just like for motion. There's a lot of people that are facing a lot of problems with their vestibular system on Earth. So again, the same medication that you can use in space, you can use on Earth too. So many of them. These are just 2 examples out of dozens, if not more.
How far did you go away from Earth?
I went on a suborbital mission, and I think we reached about 107 kilometers from Earth.
Wow. How did you feel when you looked at Earth? And so how small is it?
So Earth is probably the most beautiful thing you can ever see from space. It is really a very, very, very impactful experience. And I was sent to space to analyze something called the overview effect, which is this change that happens to your brain when you see Earth from space. So my mission really revolved around that. So you have to go through a lot of training before and after your mission to really be able to understand what really happens there. And it took me a really long time to be able to describe that or to understand what those effects were or how that's influenced my life. And it's really, like I had to break it down in pieces, like into little points and be able to understand them. And after doing that, I really, I realized that it was a lot more profound than I thought it was going to be. When you see Earth from space and when you leave Earth, you see this very, very thin blue line and you realize that that's the only thing protecting us from space. And you realize that's the only thing keeping us alive on Earth. And you develop this new sense of responsibility towards Earth, towards life on Earth, towards keeping it and protecting it, because we haven't been on Earth for that long. And when you look at how old Earth is, we're just a blink in the timeline of time. And so it's really important for us to not destroy it, and it's our responsibility. And then when you also, sorry?
I was about to say, I hope we leave it in one piece, the way you got it.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. Like, you have to take responsibility. If this is what we want for the future, then this is what we have to do. We have to take responsibility towards it. We have to realize that that's the only one we have. And it's actually much more fragile than we think it is. And every single one of us has a responsibility towards it. And not only that, but also there are no borders on the map. Those lines that you see on Google Maps or on, the maps that you've been seeing all over the world, like in school and everything, they don't actually exist. They're man-made. They've been drawn on a map by a few men centuries ago, and they've just literally been drawn. They've separated families, they've separated tribes, and these maps have been the cause of a lot of disparities and conflict in our world. So when you see that, when you understand that we're all exactly the same, and those lines have created all the problems that we're seeing on Earth, you really do tend to take responsibility and try to do something about it. And that's what I've been doing as well.
So what are you doing about it next?
That's a big question. So I'm sure we all know the conflict that's going on in the world right now, specifically in Palestine. And it's a difficult situation where we're really seeing a genocide unfold. Like, that's reality. That's what we're seeing, right? The ICJ just came out with their
initial ruling.
Yeah, their ruling yesterday or today. And so we're really, really seeing it, and it's important to take responsibility for that too, where we all have a voice. And I know, like, it's difficult to always raise your voice about these matters, and especially as someone who works in the US and in the space field, but I think it's still very, very important because you have to give voice to those who don't have one. But not only that, we have to look at the root of the problem. There's always a cause to everything. There's always a cause to, systems allowing things to happen this way. And even though the ICJ came up with its ruling, it's difficult to, enforce.
Enforce it.
International law has historically been very difficult to enforce because each country has its own jurisdiction. Like, sovereignty is really not applicable to all. Like, it's not how law works. So with international law comes a lot of problems. And how I started getting exposed to that was last year. And when I was working on space law, so I'm doing my PhD at the same time. And in my company as well, what we're trying to work on is making space more accessible, because when I started my career in the space field, I just can't apply to opportunities that exist because of my passport. And
Yeah, I
it's
was
just
about to ask you how someone from a country that doesn't have a space mission can go to space, because I grew up asking myself that question.
It's very difficult. And because it's just not open for us, you're literally just not allowed to apply. Your passport dictates what you can or cannot do in the world, and that's literally just facts. There are laws that are written that forbid US companies from hiring foreign nationals, and just how it is, you know? And it's because of a lot of the space technologies, if not most of them, are put under the munition list, which means like it's under the defense. And under ITAR, you can't really even communicate or exchange knowledge about these topics. So we've seen historically a lot of projects stop because of that. And you have a lot of international companies and organizations and a lot of like even national companies and organizations not being able to communicate or work on the problems together just because they're just not allowed to. So you have to have a way where instead of when you see a problem and someone else has a solution for it, you need to be able to work together because the goal is always the same. And instead of looking at it as like a threat or as, you know, no, I shouldn't be doing this, a lot of the companies do understand the importance of international collaboration, and we're seeing that. And it's just really not in their hands because of those laws. So a lot of companies in the US are facing a lot of problems with not being able to hire foreign nationals, and they need them. So it's not like they don't want them, they do. It's just that those laws haven't been updated, so they need to be updated, they need to be worked on. And what we do at DSI is do that. So we're doing research on that, we're surveying a lot of companies, and we're trying to understand what can be done about it. And that comes under international law, too. So that's how I was exposed to international law, and I saw that it's difficult to enforce, and that brought me to human rights, ultimately.
Great, thank you. I have a follow-up question here. I'll come back to it later if we have time. But my next question is, you mentioned us becoming a multi-planet species. You said this is not going to happen soon, earlier. How far are we from there? And what are our biggest challenge doing that?
So we're working on it, right? But there's a lot of problems that we still need to overcome before we're able to become multiplanetary. And there's a lot of us really working very, very hard for that. But we need more people. We need more people to be working in the field. We need more people with different perspectives, different experiences, different skills. So we need like everyone, you know? And it's really important to address problems with from different angles as well. So we have a lot of problems with, let's say, being able to stay healthy and alive during spaceflight. So let's say when we're talking about going to Mars, it takes 6 months with the rockets that we have now. And in 6 months, you lose a lot of bone density. You lose a lot of muscle mass. You can face a lot of problems with your eyesight, with your vestibular system. So there's a lot of things, and you can get cardiovascular deconditioning. So there's a lot of problems health-wise that for 6 months you're in space and you're in this microgravity environment. Well, by the time you reach Mars, maybe your body won't be able to handle it. And that's not even starting to talk about radiation. So right now, when we're going to the ISS, we're still protected by Earth's magnetosphere. So we're not exposed to cosmic rays. But when you go beyond that, you will be. And that comes with a lot of problems. So with radiation, there's a lot of problems because of, how those, with the materials that we have now, it's creating more problems than solving them. So we need to actually really work on the material science part of things in order to protect us. And physics, of course. And so with radiation, we need to solve all those problems. With medicine, we need to solve all those problems. And then maybe a solution is to reduce the time for this mission. So if we go with a nuclear-powered rocket, you would get there in 3 days. So why not invest more time and energy on a nuclear-powered rocket, which for me is really interesting. And I was doing that last semester for my PhD as well. I was studying nuclear rocket propulsion, and it's extremely, extremely, extremely interesting and, it's promising. It's just that
We've stopped working on it for many decades now because of the accidents that we've had. But I think once we understand or once we really educate the public about the benefits that it has, and I'm sure like in Pakistan also, there's a lot of progress there. When we apply it to different applications, we can reduce the amount of problems. You're addressing like that one problem that's causing a lot of problems. So reducing that, you basically solve a lot of them, in one go.
Taking into consideration everything you said, how achievable is that in the foreseeable future?
Well, there's a lot of things at play. There's so many things at play. There's so many parts of the world that are doing so much. India just sent a rocket to the moon with, I don't remember, it was like $70 million or something, which was like insane. So I think things are developing at a rapid pace at the moment. But then we also talk about, we need participation from a lot of countries. We need to be able to work together. With so much conflict happening in the world, like there's a much, much, much higher risk.
us just ending things on Earth,
You have a country with a space force now, which is, I'm not sure who's gonna go fight there, but seems like it. And people drawing new maps and flags on the moon.
Well, that's actually not allowed by, on the Outer Space Treaty. So when we're talking about space law, it's under international law, and it's under something called the Outer Space Treaty, which has been created a long time ago, in the 60s, 70s. And they keep adding a few things every now and then, but it's a lot of it, has been signed by a lot of the countries around the world, a lot of the parties to the UN. And it says that you are not allowed to be able to use military armory or equipment in space unless it's for peaceful purposes. So let's say you cannot sit on the moon and put a flag and have weapons on it. That's just not allowed under international law. But then again, when we're talking about international law, we've seen that it's difficult to enforce and impose, and that's why we're seeing genocides happen now. So we need to address the problem of enforceability, of the lack of enforceability of international law, so that when we look at a future for us in space, we don't make the same mistakes that we keep making here on Earth, because it's just ridiculous. And I'm just gonna say it, it is ridiculous, and we all can agree that it's ridiculous.
Space sounds very exciting, and that's most probably the most exciting Fireside I moderated in years. But if you weren't in space, where would you be?
I have a really quick answer with that, to be honest. I would be probably an F1 driver.
In what?
An F1 driver, a race driver.
Yeah, that's a very big topic in the world today, because we haven't seen a female there in 50 years. We had technically one female in history of Formula One. Speaking, since we opened the Formula One topic, do you think we will see a female Formula One driver in our lifetime? Because I'm losing hope in that, to be honest.
I hope so, yes.
What could be done? You went to space, it was never for women. The argument is always the bodies cannot handle it. Everyone on the Formula One grid will tell you similar methods to be polite here, not say BS. What could be done for females to go today and compete in Formula One, knowing how harsh is it as a sport?
Well, it's a funny thing that you ask that. I was just at the World Economic Forum last week. Oh my God, it's last week. And I spoke to one of the trainers of the Ferrari's team, and he's very, very passionate about getting women drivers, and he's the head of the Ferrari Academy. So what they're doing now is they're trying to exactly address this problem. They want more female drivers because, yes, we have a lot of differences. There's a lot of differences between men and women. Of course there is. And it's important to also realize that we are capable, very much capable of handling all the physical aspect of it. So saying that we can't is just not correct, So I think now, even speaking to Mr. Jock, He's such an incredible human being. He's really working very hard on that. So I think I'm hoping with this academy and also a few things that I just cannot disclose yet, that there will be more female drivers, hopefully, in the near future. And that's something I'm really passionate about, and I'm hoping to get to drive one soon.
I want to zoom out a bit and talk about women in STEM in general. What advices would you like to share with, I'm assuming majority of women here are into either technology or entrepreneurship or science. What would you share with them as an advice?
So I think this applies to both men and women, and it's just about really trusting your gut. Always trust your gut, and always, when you see a problem and you think you have a solution for it, don't assume that someone else is going to do it. Don't assume that someone else is going to be better at it. Don't assume that there is nothing for you to do. Because in our region, and that's a problem as well, and I think in a lot of countries that are, in similar situations, like Egypt or here, it's very easy to think that, no, there's nothing for us here. Like, there's nothing that we could do about it, right? And I think that's the first thing that people tend to think about, that, nah, like, I can't do anything about this. So first thing is overcoming that. Like, first step is you with yourself. Because once you've passed that first stage of, okay, no, actually, the solution is a simple solution. The most beautiful solutions are the simple ones. You don't need to have complex solutions. You need simple solutions to complex problems. And once you have that, then you try to work with others. And I think that's a very, very important thing. And then you choose and you be very selective with who you work. And as soon as you have that, then eventually you will end up with having a company or a team or a research team, or really being able to, address a problem that another company is having. So there's a lot of things that you could do, but it starts with yourself, of really listening to your gut more than anything. And that will help you, shut off what others are telling you. Because sometimes a lot of what you hear is like, no, don't do that, you can't do that, don't do this, it's not for us, like, it's just impossible, it's not for you. Always, right? Like, we're always hearing these things, both women and men. Maybe women a little bit more, a lot more, not little. And it's just about, don't listen to them. Just be who you are, and just trust your own gut, and really let that lead you. And if you feel like you're lost or you don't know what you're going to be working on, that's okay too. It's really about finding the problem that you want to work on. And if that's something that pushes you, then that's great. If you have a problem that's already in your mind, then I think maybe some of you in this room have a problem in their mind that you want to solve. Just try to let yourself obsess over that. Being obsessed sometimes is regarded as a negative thing, but it could be regarded as a very positive thing. And let it consume you if it has to consume you.
My final question. I'm a young person in this room. I want to go into space. Where should I go?
That's a good question. So it's difficult, right? Like, we're going to be realistic with the fact that there are few opportunities that exist for if you're not from the West. But a good thing is there are more and more every day. And what we do at my company is exactly that too. So at DSI, we are providing opportunities for people all over the world to work in the space field. It doesn't matter where you're from. Your passport has no say in how we evaluate our applicants. And you can work with an international team on real-life problems for the space field. You get to publish your work, you get to work on it hands-on. We have partners all over the world. And you really get to work with people, let's say, and be advised by people from NASA, from Blue Origin, from anywhere. So that's exactly what we're trying to do here. Like, we're trying to break those borders.
How can someone get in touch with your company?
So our applications are going to open for both our programs. So we have 2 research programs, Milky Way and Andromeda. They're going to open in April, I believe. Like, we're going to post about it, I think, both on social media and on our website. So, and then the program will be running, one program, Milky Way will be running for 3 months, Andromeda will be running for 6 months. So just keep an eye out on social media. Around April, around that time is when we open applications, and we'll be accepting a lot of people this year.
Great. following up on that, anything to read somewhere, some stuff to follow, some other initiatives maybe someone can look also at, if you have anything in mind?
In terms of research opportunities, it's difficult if you're not from the US. Like if it's not what we do, there aren't many. So that's the difficulty about this. So that's why what we're doing is really, we're really trying, and it's not easy. It's really difficult. But as for other opportunities, you can join other international organizations, volunteer, try to help out. They're doing a lot of really great things. Like I can't really name a few now, but you have the SGEC, the Space Generation Advisory Council. You have the UN Outer Space Association, or if that's UNOSA. And then you have like a few analog mission companies that are working on like organizing analog missions on Earth, so you can help that with that as well. So there is a few. It's just about like really spending time and researching it, and yeah.
Any final words?
I just hope that we're able to like erase those borders eventually. So that's a really important thing for me. So that's what we're doing at DSI, and that's what I'm also doing with my team as well on other projects related to human rights. So like, that's my biggest mission in the world right now, is to erase those borders. And we need as much help as we can get. So if you're interested in that, please do reach out.
Thank you so much, Sarah. Everyone, please put your hands together for Sarah. Thank you for staying till the end of day 2.